This is the second chapter of Sylvester. "Can you test him today?" asked Stan. "I'm afraid not," he said. "My office is closing soon. You'll have to bring him in tomorrow." Mr. and Mrs. Green set up the appointment before the vet departed. Stan couldn't stop looking at the bump Sylvester had. How could I have missed that? He wondered. The bump wasn't even that small either. Stan could see it through Sylvester's fur. Sylvester looked up and let a weak little meow. It was another cry of pain. Stan petted his cat. "Everything will be okay, Sylvester," he said. "You're not going anywhere." Although Sylvester was weaker, he still managed to rub up on Stan's hand as he was being petted. The two of them could both feel the love they got from each other. Eventually, they fell asleep. Stan tagged along with his parents the next morning to take Sylvester for his tests. He sat with nervous anticipation in the living room as he waited for the nurse to call out, "Sylvester?" And since Stan didn't bring anything to keep him occupied, he found himself counting the number of tiles on the wall. Mr. Green noticed Stan's peculiar behavior. "You all right?" he asked. Stan was hesitant at first for a moment before getting at, Yeah, I guess." But he saw right through his son's nervousness. "Look," he said, "Sylvester just got his tumor recently, so if it gets any worse, we can remove it and he'll be all better." Stan looked at him with worriedness written on his face. What if he didn't receive it early? His father didn't know how to respond to this, so he simply shrugged and did his best to comfort his son. Minutes and minutes passed until eventually one of the nurses called Sylvester's name. The family got up and followed the nurse through a long hallway. Stan looked into each room carefully. Most of them were seemingly empty, while others were occupied with doctors giving animals a regular checkup. If only that was what my cat was here for, Stan thought to himself as he entered some of the animals that reminded him of Sylvester's younger years. Eventually, the family and the nurse got to the end of the hall. The nurse opened a door on the right labeled Lab and guided the family in. Stan asked the nurse, "What do you guys plan to do?" "Just a couple of tests, sweetie, don't worry." "Will I get to see him after?" "Of course you will, it won't take long." Stan smiled in relief, but the fact that Sylvester not only had cancer, but also a tumor didn't make him feel any better, but at least he would still have a chance to see his cat again tonight. Sylvester looked through the bars of the cage at Stan. He meowed weakly, wishing not only for him to pet him, but also for the pain in his back to go away. He had been lying down in Stan's bed for the past few weeks, hoping that the comfort he received from Stan and sleep would help mask his misery. "I love you, Sylvester," Stan said before the cat cried upon seeing him. The family accompanied Sylvester as the doctor ran his first test. He put Sylvester through a unique device that had a red light on it. Mr. Green leaned forward and whispered in his son's ear, "Kind of looks like R2-D2, doesn't it?" Stan chuckled at his father's comment. He needed some comic relief after everything that was going on. The machine booted up. It started making a low humming noise that slowly became a loud vroom. Occasionally, a loud beep would sound which startled Stan a bit. The red light on the machine turned green. This indicated that Sylvester was ready to come out. "How is he?" Stan asked as he retrieved his cat. The vet shrugged in response. "We don't know. We'll be getting the results back soon. In the meantime, make sure Sylvester gets a lot of rest." The family left the vet. They expected to get the results back in about 2 days. Not much happened during the next couple of days aside from Sylvester crying from either pain food, or to go to the litter box. Stan hated seeing Sylvester like this. He wasn't ready for his best friend to die. The night before the results came, Stan reached out to pet Sylvester and whispered, "I wish you could live forever." The first star twinkled brightly in the night sky. The following morning, Mrs. Green called Stan and his father downstairs. Stan made it down first to find that his mother had a look of grief on her face. A chill ran down his spine, because he knew this could only mean one thing. "Is it?" Stan started, but his mother cut him off. "Please," she said, "sit down." Mr. Green came downstairs moments later. He sat down in the recliner. "Did the results come back?" he asked, and Mrs. Green nodded in response. The two boys waited for her to say the results, but Mrs. Green was hesitant. She was mainly concerned about how her son would take the results. "You ready, Stan?" Stan realized that for some weird reason, he wanted to know what the results were, but at the same time, found that it was better not knowing. "Which is it, Stan?" he thought to himself. "Make up your mind." Stan then decided that it was better to know. After all, Sylvester's chances of survival might be great if they find out early. Stan drew in a deep breath. "Yes," he said, "I'm ready." His mother began to tell the news. Apparently, Sylvester had the tumor for quite some time. "How?" Stan asked. "Well, it seems like it started in his stomach, but then slowly got bigger." Stan asked with a little hope, "Is there anything we can do?" Unfortunately, his mother told him the news he didn't want to hear. "I'm afraid not." "Oh, okay." Stan said this, trying his hardest to make it seem like it wasn't affecting him. He wasn't doing a very good job, though. "Stan?" Mrs. Green said. "Are you alright?" "Yeah, I'm just, tired." Mr. Green chimed in. "Stan, if this is upsetting you, you can tell us and we'll help you out." Stan was getting a little irritable. "It's not upsetting me." Okay, his mother said with her hands up. "But just remember what your father said, okay?" After that, Stan went upstairs to see Sylvester, who, alas, looked to be in more pain than ever before. "Why is this happening?" Stan said to himself. "Why, Sylvester?" He sat on his bed next to Sylvester and looked at him with a mind full of grief. Stan remained in his room with Sylvester accompanying him. Then there was a knock at the door. It was Mrs. Green. She came in with something in her hand. "What's that?" asked Stan. Mrs. Green replied, "You'll see." Then she sat down next to Stan. She handed one of the photos to Stan. A warm smile grew on his face as he looked at the photo. It was of him when he was about 6, maybe 7, holding Sylvester like a woman cradling her child. A tear formed in Stan's eye. He looked at his mother. "Look how beautiful he is." Mrs. Green smiled as she nodded in agreement. Then she handed him another picture. This one showed Sylvester sleeping in his backpack. He looked very comfortable. Stan let out a weak chuckle. "He sure did love my backpack, didn't he?" "Yes, he did. I remember we would have to lure him out with the cat treats every morning to get him out. You got a lot of cat fur in there by the end of 2nd grade, young man." As they continued looking at the photos, Stan noticed his father standing in the doorway, so he invited him in. Mr. Green looked down at the photo spread out on his son's bedroom floor. A disappointed sigh ran through his nose. "Such a shame about that cat," he said as he turned to Stan. "I remember the day you and your mother picked him out." "Yes, we did him a favor, too," said Mrs. Green, and Stan gave her a curious glance. "What do you mean?" Well, when we adopted him, the pet store owner claimed he was found all by himself. So, he was abandoned? Stan asked. Exactly. He was helpless and had nobody to turn to for comfort. Stan's head dropped to the floor. That's awful, he said. Did they ever find his mother? I'm afraid not, Mr. Green said as he browsed through the Sylvester. Mr. Green said as he browsed through the Sylvester photo gallery. Mrs. Green tried to lighten the mood by assuring Stan that despite Sylvester's dark past, they were still able to give him a good life, and that once he left, he wouldn't be lost from their memories. But she spoke a little too soon, because he didn't want to hear this now. Mom, can you please stop? He asked. It still is a shock to know that Sylvester not only has cancer, but also a tumor. Plus, I want to enjoy my last few weeks with him without worrying about what will happen. His mother nodded at him. I understand, champ. Spend all the time you want with Sylvester. After that, his parents left the room, and Stan spent the whole day in there with his cat. Stan lied in his bed, petting Sylvester, and although he was too weak, the cat managed to nuzzle his nose across Stan's fingers. As he did this, Stan looked back on the days he and Sylvester spent with each other. He silently wept as he remembered how animated his feline friend was when he was young, and how he would always chase and paw at everything no matter what it was. Whether it be a bread tie or a shoelace, Sylvester would play with it. Stan missed this. He wanted his friend back, but he knew there was nothing he could do about it. This caused a small flame of rage to run through Stan's stomach, which made him ball his hands into a fist and slammed it down on his mattress. Normally, this would have made Sylvester jump, but not today, much to Stan's disappointment, who had hoped that the cat would give him some kind of sign. At school the next day, the teacher taught, but Stan didn't listen. Not that he refused to. He was usually very interested in what the lesson was, but because he couldn't keep his mind off of Sylvester. What do I do if I come home and he's already gone? He thought to himself, as he imagined coming home from a long day of loud students and lecturing teachers, only to have the news dropped by his mother. He didn't make it, he imagined her saying. What do you mean? He would say. Sylvester, he imagined his father hesitating for a moment before going on. Sylvester isn't with us anymore. Stan then imagined himself running down upstairs despite the pleas from his parents. Just not to go look, and finding Sylvester in his bed as lifeless as a toy with drained batteries. He imagined giving his cat a gentle nudge but getting no response from him. Stan pushed this thought out of his head. No, he said to himself. No, bad thought. Stan tried to shield the negative thought by focusing on his teacher's lesson, but something had caught his eye outside. A cat in the distance, coming toward the window. No one else saw it, since Stan was the only few kids who had taken a desk in the back of the class. As the cat neared closer, Stan noticed to his horror that part of the cat's bone could be seen sticking out of its leg, surrounded by decaying flesh. Good Lord, Stan thought. Was it run over? How could it still be walking with such grace? Eventually, the cat got to the window and hissed through it. Oh God, was that at me? It had to be. I'm the only one by the window. Stan was about to alert his teacher about the half-dead animal lurking outside, but continued to keep it to himself when he looked again, only to find that the cat had wandered away. He had another encounter on the bus ride home. Just as the bus driver was getting near his house, she drove past the cat that was lying in the grass. No one gave him much thought since they were all too busy either doing their homework or getting shouted at by the bus driver for being too loud. But Stan saw it as clear as day. The first thing he noticed was that the feline was decaying around its belly, so his rotting stomach was being exposed. Stan looked at the cat in shock. End of chapter 2.